to everyone who's gathering. It's such an honor to get to be with you today. And so we are going to be starting in just a moment. But first, big, huge greetings to everyone, wherever you are on the planet. My name's Claire Rumor, and I'm going to be your host today. I'm one of the co-directors at the Shakti Shiva Academy, and I'm based here in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so welcome, welcome. If you're in a place or you're in a position where you can turn your camera on, that would be fantastic so that we can see you and start making connection and start weaving together our field as more of us join. So we're going to have quite the collection of folks from all over the place, many who will be here with us live, and many, many who will be watching after today. So welcome, and it's great to have you here live, present with us as we explore existential kink. So first things first, before I give more intro and set more container, I'm curious how many people, and you can raise your physical hand or your digital hand, but how many people are already familiar with existential kink or already have an EK practice? If that's you, like you're familiar with what existential kink is, can give us a sense. Awesome. And then for those of you who are fairly new or brand new, this is going to be an awesome introduction to kind of get you started in the realm of existential kink. But first things first, again, my name's Claire Rumor. I'll be your host, mostly in the background today, but I'm one of the co-directors and senior faculty members at the Shakti Shiva Academy. And so for those of you who are new to the Shakti Shiva Academy, we are an online, at least presently, online global community of learners, and our courses love to traverse the intersections of psychology, sexuality, and mysticism. And so EK, existential kink, fits perfectly inside of those subjects. And one of our big focuses at the Academy is polarities and polarity processing, and integrating polarities so that we have more creative capacity, more creative agency in our lives. And existential kink is such a fantastic modality and methodology for identifying polarities and bringing them into more integration. And so now one of the big tenets at our school is maximum self-care, maximum radical self-care. So take a moment to make sure your space is exactly how you need it for comfort. Make sure you've got cushion, that you have warmth or coolness. This part's super important because we'll be exploring terrain, and we'll be exploring terrains today that might bring up emotions. And so we're going to do the best we can to keep you in comfort. And a big part of that is you taking really good care of yourself via your space. So make sure you've got beverages, hydration, things to write with, whatever you need is awesome. Today's call is set for 90 minutes. However, at the Shakti Shiva Academy, we honor both the Shiva, which is the container of the time, and the Shakti, which is the flow that can happen. And so to that end, at 90 minutes, we might find that there's a lot of flow that's still wanting to happen. We might be in a really juicy conversation. So at that point, I'll make sure there's a pivot for people who need to leave. And then for those who are able to stay and want to stay, we'll keep going for a little bit longer to complete the flow and allow for everything that wants to be said and shared today. So just to give you that frame, at the 90-minute mark, we'll either create a pivot, we'll either complete, or we'll create a pivot. So that's the container for today. And then the overview of the flow is that after we get settled, I'll hand it over to Sheena, who's our phenomenal teacher and facilitator today, and she'll take us through the teaching piece. And so there'll be a good long chunk of teaching piece, introducing the concepts and the axioms and some practice. We'll be doing a bit of EK together. But there'll be a chunk of the teaching, and then we'll shift to questions and answers. So if any questions or ideas come through for you, be certain to jot them down. Feel free to write them down, and then we'll be able to address them at the end. And then a way that's important to start with, apart from radical self-care and container setting, is a little bit of what we call pleasure first. And this is to help each of us get into our bodies so that we're not just in the mental, intellectual space, because it can be really easy to just hang out there. So first things first, start, if you will, to stretch a little bit and feel the space that's around you. This is your space, and you get to take it up. So you can feel around, stretch your arms, stretch your neck, stretch your lungs, your rib cage, big breathing, clearing your throat, rolling your shoulders, whatever you need to help you be and feel more in your body. And then the other piece, as you're still waking up or stretching around, depending on the time of day, start to move your face in the sense of different facial pieces. Existential kink can be a practice that brings up quite a bit of emotions. And so let's take the face through those. We're going to do 4 of the 5 main emotions. So whatever version of happy, let your face do your version of happy. And then angry. Ooh, let your face go to angry, whatever that is for you. Subtle, big, pronounced. And now go to sad. Whatever's there and sad in your face. And then disgust. And now let yourself cycle through mad, glad, sad, disgust. And just exercise your face. Let yourself be here now. Because all the feels will come through. If not in this class, then beyond this class. So it helps to be practiced and let the brain chemistry adjust and adapt. So thanks for playing with me. Now let me introduce you to Sheena Witter, who is our teacher for today. Sheena, who is up in Canada, is half ring master, half fairy godmother, a certified existential kink shadow integration coach. She's a soul-based business development strategist and a soul realignment Akashic record teacher, helping you to craft your most luscious life and specifically your business, inner and outer. And through alchemical transformation and soul crafting, she aids and abets committed magicians, spiritual folk, kin who are into energy in creating flow and fulfillment by building 2 good to be true businesses that also change the world. And you can find Sheena coaching on Carolyn Elliot, who is the creator of Existential Kink, for those who aren't familiar. You can find Sheena coaching on Carolyn Elliott's Alchemical Community Wealth, which some of you are already members of. And you can also find Sheena in the Existential Kink Facebook group if you're not already a part of that group. So without further ado, I welcome Sheena. We're so happy to have you here, and take it away, please.
Thank you very much, Claire. That was a beautiful opening exercise. I just feel it kind of flowing through my body, which is absolutely glorious. Existential kink is really an embodiment practice, so that was a beautiful warm-up. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited and honored to be here with you today. And as Claire mentioned, we are going to go into existential kink. And I'll be doing a little bit of teaching. We'll be having a group existential kink meditation practice together. And we'll go into some of the different points where you might be getting stuck, how you're embodying and living existential kink as just a life way of being. So what I'm going to invite everybody to do now is existential kink is really based on making the unconscious conscious. We work a lot with Jung's theory of the unconscious. So I'm going to take you through just a really brief introduction via looking at yourself as a house. So I'm going to invite you just to close your eyes. Just feel yourself in your body, in your chair. Taking some nice deep breaths. And I'm going to invite you to imagine a very ornate house. The front of this house is like your persona. It is a facade that faces the world. This is your public image. This is what you want other people to see. It's also how you interact with the world. We have so much invested in our personas. So you might find that you're kind of hiding yourself and your house looks like everyone else's on the block. Or maybe your house is that one that stands out, that's very different, that everyone comments on. This outer facade is your persona. And I'm going to come invite you around to the back of your house with me. So very first, we have the collective unconscious. This is your foundations, your struts. This is the full structure of your home. And for the most part, we've completely inherited this, from our shared human history, our genetics, our cultural memory. Our collective unconscious communicates through symbolism, archetypes, patterns, and for the most part, we are not even aware of it unless we really go looking for it. But it has a huge, drastic impact on our lives. You notice inside the house, there's a little stick figure. And that's us. It's a representation of our egos. So our ego is actually our conscious awareness. It's what interfaces between our inner and outer worlds. It's our ego that allows us to have an embodied human experience in the first place. And people often say we have to transcend or kill our egos, but our egos are incredibly extraordinary. They keep us safe, they keep us alive. I like to think of my ego as a toddler who's often throwing a tantrum to get its way. Our egos feel like they're the centers of the entire world, but loving and honoring it is the best way to get it on the side of your big S self. And this is what Jung calls individuation. So there's the rest of the space in this house, and this is our personal unconscious. It's built up as we grow and experience ourselves in the world. It's the interactions that we have with other people. It is influenced by our collective unconscious and what part is the collective we take on ourselves. So like furniture and rooms in a house, we tend to build complexes, little arrangements of thoughts and feelings and beliefs that make up who we are. And these complexes shape and mold our lives, our habits, our responses, our automatic ways of being in the world. And often we're not even aware of it. And finally, there is that junk drawer or room. This is the one that you really don't let anybody see. So it might be literally where you hide the bodies. And this is our shadow. This is where we cast the shameful, unlovable, dirty, nasty bits of ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge, we don't want to see it, we just want to pretend that it does not exist. I'm just going to invite you to explore that shadow of yours a little bit and just kind of notice and see what's there. This is the part that we will be playing with today. And as you're exploring, notice a cat. And this cat really stands for our animus or our anima. This is one of Jung's most essential archetypes. It represents the unintegrated masculine or feminine principle. And this is a part that we explore a lot through E8K. And fortunately, we have a very quick and effective way of exploring Jung's theory of the unconscious, and that is through EK. So Jung has a famous expression, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. EK is designed to get you in touch with the unconscious parts of yourself in a way that doesn't threaten the ego too much at first, so you can really see them, accept them, and love them. It's all about turning on the lights and the unused parts of yourself to really discover the treasures that are within. EK allows us to explore our personal relationships to the unconscious, and our unconscious beliefs and collective archetypes, and ways that we just unconsciously embody them. Again, the most famous of which is the anima and the animus. I like to refer to mine as a scrappy ass little tomcat. When we don't acknowledge our unconscious influences, it tends to come out in ways that consciously our ego just hates. This is where the axiom, having is evidence of wanting, comes in. There's parts of us that absolutely do revel in the experience that we're having right now. The pain, the frustration, the lack, the limitation, the constriction. Parts of us really do love this. So getting in touch with these parts of ourselves, celebrating them, loving them, they feel witnessed. And this allows their wisdom and their gifts to unfold for us. And this is really important to do with the things that we've cast into our shadow. To individuate and to be our full selves, we need to be integrated and we need to be whole. And incredible creative, destructive potential and power lay within our shadow. And EK allows us to embrace our monsters, experience them in their full glory, and it has a beautiful way of dissolving shame. And this enables us to show up more fully, strengthen our persona, and in the long run, after some healthy destruction, we start to realize that the only difference between a god and a monster is our approval. And our approval is what allows us to fully explore and integrate all parts of ourselves. And what I would love to invite you to do is to open your eyes. And we are just going to practice for about 1 minute, practicing creating a field of full approval for ourselves, our personas, our shadows, everything that is going to come up for us in our class today. And I'm going to invite you to turn on the screen if you don't have your screen on. It's comfortable for you to do so. And I'm going to ask all of us to just spend a minute just gazing at each other in full acceptance, in full open-hearted presence. And we're going to just start creating this field of coherence, of community and acceptance that we will be practicing in today. So if you want to scroll through the different pages and kind of gaze at everyone, if you feel very drawn to somebody, we're going to be practicing presencing. So I'm seeing and feeling you, seeing and feeling me. So I'm just going to be silent for about a minute and just really take all of you in. And I invite you to do the same. And thank you all very much. I love seeing how smiles are contagious. A beautiful field that we're creating together. So that was just a little introduction to Jung's theory of the unconscious. Very, very simplified. Jung has written books and books on it. I do find that the house imagery just kind of helps anchor in what we're talking about. So I would love to introduce you all to the idea of existential kink. And this is a shadow integration process that was created by Dr. Carolyn Elliot. It is a 15-minute container, and it's actually very simple. Of course, the nuances and the magic is in the process of how it's carried out. But fundamentally, we identify a situation in our life that our conscious mind, our ego, just does not like. And normally it's like, those really annoying recurring patterns, habituated behaviors that, we just kind of don't like about ourselves. And we go into a meditation where we allow ourselves to very gently get in touch with a part of ourselves that passionately enjoys the situation, who just absolutely loves it. It's like a kid in a candy store. There's a part of us that just loves it. And we get on that part of ourselves side. So we deliberately and consciously allow ourselves to receive, to feel big gratitude for, and to get off on the situation that we have so brilliantly created. So existential kink, it is very much inspired by regular kink and BDSM, and just that an idea that you can learn to enjoy anything. So we do use a lot of that kind of language, but getting off is really different from person to person. It's different from session to session. So it might look like a physical climax or relief. It might look like just a warm, buzzy feeling in your body. It might look like a soft, tender heart opening. We're really looking for embodied sensation. And whatever you feel is absolutely perfect. And we're all coming at this from very different life experiences. And I mean, when I started doing EK, it took me about a year because I have some sexual trauma in my background where it was like the idea of like getting off in a traditional physical sense. It took me a good solid year before I could. For me, it was always just like, okay, my body's starting to relax. I can like feel into my heart space. Sometimes I'd feel it in like my gut would go all sparkly. So whatever shows up for you, however it shows up for you, is absolutely perfect. And it's going to be different for all of us. So this is yourself to give yourself a blank permission slip that whatever you experience, even if you experience nothing, it's absolutely perfect. And there is sometimes a tendency to be too much in our heads, or if disassociation or numbness is a very common experience for you, that might be all you get to. And that is also absolutely okay. I will be sharing a resource later where you can start actually using the EK process to start getting into relationship with your numbness. But however it shows up for you is perfect. So what we are going to do is I am going to lead you on an existential kink meditation. There's many different versions that Carolyn has created. This is just a very basic one that will allow you to start just learning the process. So you want to do EK when you're in a pretty good mood. If you're trying to do existential kink at a time when you feel miserable, it can often just result in like rumination or self-blame, and that's really not what this practice is about. So one of the biggest mistakes that people make in existential kink is, I'm going to go to my deepest pain first. Please don't do that. This is really, we want to approach existential kink from an embodied place of curiosity and something that we can have a little bit more fun with. So you choose a situation that is mildly annoying, that you can find curiosity and playfulness in. So you don't want to do EK when you're experiencing depression or grief or on a situation that is trauma triggering or re-triggering. We want to keep it very light, especially at first. People have had wonderful results going through working on traumatic experiences and things like that, but it really needs to be done in a container that is very held with someone who is trained in trauma integration. So you do want to stay with one topic until you feel like you've integrated it. So we recommend about 7 days, but it could take more or less depending on how sticky it is. If you're EKing a situation that's like deep in your shadow, that has both personal and collective enmeshment, it could take months. And that is absolutely okay. There is no race to the finish line. So what I would love for everyone to do is to just close their eyes right now and just tune into your body and allow a don't like situation to arise for you. I'm actually going to ask you to put it into chat, just so we can kind of get an idea of what everyone's going to be working on today. This is a don't like situation, but one that you can still kind of be curious about and playful with. Feeling invisible and unheard. Beautiful. Feeling tired. Procrastination. That's a good one. Controlling family members. Social events. Driving 5 hours to pick someone up and having to bring them back. Ooh, I don't like my feminine side. Beautiful. Not liking it when you're not present. Overwhelm. Breaking things that are precious. Being visible on social media. Binge watching Netflix. Beautiful. Control. Excellent. These are all beautiful things to start EK on. Okay. So everyone's got their don't like situation. So I am going to invite you to get into a comfortable space. So if you want to turn off your camera, if you want to stretch out, you don't have to be where you can be seen, but where you can still hear the sound of my voice. Excellent. So we're going to have about a 15-minute session. So just allowing yourself to get comfortable in your chair. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and feel your body relaxing. Releasing any tension, releasing anything that we just talked about, or any questions about how you're going to do this, any stress about having to do it right. And I'm going to invite you into a state of relaxed awareness. You are safe and in complete control of your meditation at all times. I affirm you as the powerful creator of your own experience. Let my words wash over you. Weave into your experience what feels good and right, letting anything that does not pass by like a fluffy cloud in a gentle breeze. So I'm going to invite you to take 3 deep breaths, releasing all tension in your body. 3, gently letting go of any thoughts that have been on your mind, setting aside everything we've discussed and being fully present in this experience. Letting go of any sounds in your environment, just letting them fade away. 2, gently letting go of any feelings and emotions you have been experiencing, knowing they will still be here when you're finished, if you would like to pick them back up. 1, gently letting go of any physical tension or distracting sensation in your body, tapping into the deep knowing that you are perfectly safe and the powerful creator of this experience. Whatever arises for you is absolutely perfect. Using all of your senses, begin by stepping into this familiar scene you have chosen to explore. Explore it like it's a high-def movie that's rich in detail. And I will give you a moment to do so. You feel emotions and body sensations welling up within you. What are they? Whatever it is, allow it to flow through you and feel it as much as possible. If you find yourself getting too far into your head, just bring it back to the feelings in your body. What are you feeling in this experience? Now imagine that this is the very last time ever you will be in this situation and experiencing these emotions, these sensations that you chose to experience. Can you find a little thrill? Perhaps just a little bit of turn on at this amazing situation that you created for yourself. Whatever arises for you is absolutely perfect. As the emotions flow through you, you start to notice a deeper layer to your experience. You begin to tune into a part of yourself that you never really noticed before. This part of yourself gets thrill and delight from the situation exactly as it is. It loves all the emotions, all the sensations that have come up for you in this situation. With a playful curiosity and the focus of your hot electric attention, tune as deeply as you can into this amazing part of yourself. Where in the body do you feel it the most? Where does it feel most alive for you? Does this part of yourself have a name? Don't try to shift or deny whatever comes up for you. Just be curious. You may like to dialogue with this part of yourself. What do they love about your current situation? What part of them is feeling so met with this experience exactly how it is? I'm going to give you some time to explore this part of yourself. Now, playfully explore fully accepting and loving this previously unconscious part of yourself. I'm going to invite you to come up with your own statements, to find statements that feel a hot zing of truth. Statements like, I embrace and receive these sensations. This unconscious enjoyment matters just as much as any other enjoyment in my life. I'm willing to stop pretending that a part of me doesn't really love this situation that I'm in. I'm totally allowed to have this experience and feel the way I do without any shame or judgment. I can get in touch with my unconscious enjoyment of this thing. I can see how it serves me greatly. In fact, I love how not getting this thing my ego thinks I want allows me to play with, experience, and integrate different parts of myself that honor all of me in a way that's actually pretty safe. I open up to feeling wild, insane gratitude and sexy, hot excitement about these situations and sensations that I'm feeling. I'm going to give you some time to explore your turn on with this part of yourself. Everything that comes up for you is absolutely perfect. Now, I'm going to invite you to deliberately and consciously allow yourself to receive and feel tremendous gratitude for this part of yourself that loves to create these high sensation situations for you. Gratitude for the parts of you that are totally happy and gleeful about the situations that it keeps creating for you and the roles that they have played. This might be little teeny tiny sparks of gratitude. This might be great gushing gratitude. We don't want to force anything. However it shows up for you is perfect. We express gratitude for all the highly sensational situations in life that are created for you to experience all the different flavors that your unconscious wants. Gratitude for the parts of you that ache for the sensations and experiences of things that we have consciously deemed dirty or bad or wrong or shameful or that we shouldn't enjoy. Gratitude and the deepest love for ourselves, how we show up in this human existence, and our limitless capacity and desire to experience all of it, to experience everything in this beautiful existence that we share. I'm going to invite you to say goodbye to this part of yourself for now in a way that feels complete to you. And allow my voice to gently filter into your consciousness as you begin to regain full conscious awareness. 3, you start to become more aware of your body, your breaths, your physical sensations. 2, you become more aware of your environment, the surfaces that you're sitting on, sounds that you can hear in your environment. And 1, you wake up fully refreshed, aware, excited about the rest of your day, and ready to join me back on our Zoom call. So I'm going to invite everyone just to fully be embodied right now, to have a little stretch, drink a little bit of water if you need to. And thank you for allowing me to share with you our basic existential kink meditation. So what I would like to do is just have a little bit of time for integration and sharing. I would love to know what came up for you if you want to share in the chat. I will be answering some questions at the end, but if there's anything like experience-wise, it would be beautiful to share. So like I mentioned, this is a very, very basic version of existential kink. You can get as creative with it as you want to. Carolyn is in the process of creating a self-pleasure existential kink combination practice, which is very, very exciting. Beautiful. Claire says it felt so good to be a yes to what has been so unpleasant. Beautiful. Very empowering to dialogue with his parts. Yes. Okay. Yeah, there's sometimes a tendency to have an outcome or to hold ourselves to, like, you know, I have to do EK in order to fix, in order to, you know, make it better. And that's a very common, you know, conscious need. It's like we have to have that goal in place to do so. And part of the power of really allowing yourself to embody this process is this idea that there is nothing to fix, to heal, to save. It's really about remembering the parts of ourselves that we've forgotten and going on that journey of what that integration looks like. Now, if we approach it from that point of view, normally our lives do get better. We do end up, what's in our unconscious tends to just want to be seen and heard and loved. And if we do that through this container of existential kink, it doesn't come out sideways in all of these other ways. If we go into it with these things like, I must fix it, I must conquer it, you know, then it's just going to act up even more. So the beautiful thing about existential kink is, you know, it is a very embodied, imaginal process. And our brains can't really tell the difference between what we are imagining and what we are experiencing. So it's a beautiful way of like loving these parts of ourselves without, you know, having to deal with them in our very external circumstances. Just gonna give me 1 second to take a quick look at the chat. Yes. Yeah, it's slightly odd, counter to the normal habit, but surprised at how much you enjoy your upsetting behavior. That is it, you know, it's like there's this kind of gleeful part of ourselves, this childlike wonder and play that we don't always get to, we don't consciously accept, we tamp it down, you know, it's not part of our facade, it's not part of like the image that we want to share with the world, so we just pretend it doesn't exist. The thing about our shadows is we have also what Jung calls a golden shadow. So it's not just the bad, I'm definitely using air quotes here, or negative things that we put into our shadow. It's any experience and information and part of ourselves that for whatever reason we deem not safe. So this might be our best qualities, our good traits too, that we just don't allow out to play. And there is no such thing as failing, Wayne. So if you go into a deep place and you lose touch, that's all part of the process. I have had times where I've just fallen asleep. And you know what? Partially that's, you know, your body's trying to protect yourself. And that's absolutely okay too. Beautiful. So we are going to go into some of the axioms of EK. And an axiom is a proposition that is assumed without proof for the sake of studying the consequences that follow. And so Carolyn has created these axioms, and I just figure we'll go through them together because this is definitely part of like the container of the EK process, but they're also pretty interesting to play with just in daily life. So the first one is having is evidence of wanting. This is the most controversial. If this is the first thing you hear about EK or shadow integration without any other context, it can be seen as triggering and victim blaming. So I'm calling that out because that is, if you are not familiar with the process, it can seem that way. This is when we are aligned at the level of action, thought, and emotion to our current experience, we have the experience. You know, that's just how reality is formed. And it's our current reality. It doesn't mean that we can't change it or that we don't have power to do something different. It means that we have to acknowledge that some tiny unconscious part of ourselves wanted this experience. And, if we're all facets of the divine wants to experience everything, the totality of creation, the good, the bad, the ugly, the right, the wrong, all of the different polarities that we like to say, it's this or this, and we try to focus on one and ignore everything else. Like the divine wants to experience everything through us. So EK is really good at identifying the chronic patterns that we find ourselves in over and over and over again. And I've found that when I have been the most stuck, leaning into the stuckness and seeing how it serves me gives me a really good understanding of whatever energetic state that I'm in now. And seeing it frees up more energy to see what the next steps are. And any circumstances that we experience, we have a vibrational match to. There's some part of your conscious or unconscious that wants it. And the circumstances resonate too, and it shows up in your life. And, we can experience anything along the spectrum. So if we label it as bad, we try to forget it, we go away from the experience. We try to deny it, we resist it, suppress it. And this is really what creates all of our shadows. And we label it as bad. And that's actually where it becomes more powerful, because our unconscious itself is very, very generative. And, one of Jung's sayings that you probably hear the most is, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So having as evidence wanting is very much that aspect. And a large part of shadow integration work is identifying the unconscious aspects and bringing them forward. And this is what we do when we create a united will. So our unconscious and our conscious kind of become one. And then we start manifesting from a place of wholeness. And then, having as evidence wanting reflects an experience where we're actually attracting and vibrating more abundance. So that is the first axiom. The second one is that everything in life is a stroke, and it's possible to get off on every stroke. So we tend to have very, very small windows of tolerance for what we prefer in an experience. And this is really about expanding our capacity to experiencing pleasure in situations where we normally wouldn't. And everything that happens in life is a stroke. And in EK, getting off doesn't just refer to physical climax, although it can. It really focuses on finding pleasure in all situations. And this really allows us to have a more fun and playful experience and not take life so seriously, which is actually a major turn on. So an example of this one is like getting messy. There's like the conscious part of myself, I hate getting messy. It's like, I don't want to garden and play in the dirt. I don't want to the idea of getting messy, I really hate it. But there is something where like my brain will just like flip. And as soon as I make that conscious decision to get messy, I'm all in it. Like I'll be rolling around in the dirt and just like up to my elbows and whatever I'm baking in dough and just have things flinging around, and it's glorious and it's a lot of fun. But I have to get over that consciousness before I can just like, this is a stroke. This is just going to be fun and playful. Another example of a stroke that I had last week was I stepped in dog poop in my sandal, way far away from home. And I could feel the sensations and I was like, oh, well, I could immediately go to, I hate this. This is gross. This is disgusting. And that's a natural state, obviously, right? Dog poop, not fun. But then I just went, well, I can't do anything about it. And there's a part of me that enjoys the mess. So I'm just going to fully embrace it. And, I walked a little bit further and I managed to find some water miraculously so I could kind of wash myself off. But it's all about our perception of our experience. And I would love to know from some of you, what are some strokes that you might like that other people might not? Maybe it's getting messy. Maybe it's Brussels sprouts. Some people love them. Some people hate them. What is a stroke for you? Something that you enjoy or that you've learned to enjoy. Another example is, the orgasmic birth movement. Birth is traditionally like painful and hard and, one of the hardest things a woman can go through. And yet people have found a way to make it pleasurable, to enjoy it. Not showering, perfect example. Yep. Getting dirty in the yard, boredom. peanut butter and spinach sandwiches. Beautiful. Being goofy? Yes. So the degree of being turned off or turned on by something is a matter of approval. So disapproval is very alienating. It takes us out of connection. It leads to resentment and disempowerment. And it's possible to experience the same set of events. So this includes like events in our world, but also internal events, like your thoughts, emotions, from a place that is turned on or turned off. So when we're turned off by emotions, we judge them as negative or bad, we repress them. And this is the difference between closing yourself off from an experience, repressing it, shoving it into your shadow, or giving yourself permission to fully feel, the hot, electrifying sensation of the emotions in the present moment in a very embodied way. So a perfect example of this is anger. Emotions are meant to flow through us. They're meant to be embodied. They're meant to be felt and experienced. And when we don't, when we refuse to, when we, deny our anger, I'm a nice person, I'm not supposed to show my anger, things like that, then it manifests as sickness in the body chronically. So this doesn't mean, you have permission to just like go crazy over everyone and be, fully expressing your shadow in a way that hurts other people. It means that we have a way where we can actually explore it and we can actually honor it. So one example of it is traditionally like jealousy is bad. You should not be jealous. We're judged or for being like jealous creatures and the green-eyed monster and all of that. But my business partner, it's like we have outrageous jealousy celebrations because we met each other when we were coaching wealth. And it was always like, at first it was like this competition, like, oh, you had a better experience or answer to that question. And I got to this one before you. And you could go like very much into that, tit for tat or like hardcore competition. And we would start every call we had together with just outrageous jealousy and just celebration and just like going over the top with it and celebrating each other for our successes. And I'm so jealous of you. And it kind of had a way of transmuting the whole feeling. So I totally encourage, just allowing it to flow in a way that's really fun and fully honoring. And, radical approval isn't easy or automatic. It's really an art form. So in our interactions, we ask, where can I radically approve of this person, this feeling, this thought, this sensation? And if you can develop this skill, it will change your life. And radical approval, let me be very clear, does not mean that you are putting up with abuse or behavior that infringes upon your being or anything like that. You can radically approve of the person and what they're experiencing without approving of their actions. That is important. Yes, I hate the word nice. It's great to be kind. Nice is definitely one of those ones that we could unpack a bit. So sensation can be experienced through pain or pleasure. So any uncomfortable high sensation is an invitation that lets you know that you're at an edge. So approaching it with awareness and consciousness instead of reactivity is really where we create magic. You allow yourself to feel into the high sensation. We can't always choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond. And it's really in our response that makes the entire experience what it is. So in sexual kink or BDSM, people may deliberately choose to engage in painful experiences, logging, bonding, bondage, what have you, and actually derive pleasure and satisfaction from it. It's in a very specific container and allows you to experience and play with sensation in a way that is safe, sane, and consensual. So when painful things happen in our regular lives, we often don't feel like we're at choice. Totally natural. existential kink involves deciding to at least start by pretending or experimentally accepting that having is evidence of wanting, that some part of you playfully, humorously, curiously chose and desires a given painful situation. So when you do this, you greatly expand your sense of agency, you unite your will, and you open yourself up for a sense of fun and playfulness to come into the scene. And this is sometimes, for me, I just end up usually like, I'll find myself in a situation with somebody who's just being absolutely ridiculous, and it just seems to be highlighted, and I usually just end up laughing, like they're getting so bent out of shape over something that, you know, we can't really control, we can't do anything about, so we can like be pissed off and angry about it, or we can just be like, this is amazing, and just kind of laugh about it. You know, some people, one of the things that I've really found useful in pain or pleasure, I like to play with it, is, you know, if this was if I was dying tomorrow and this was the sensation, you know, how would I experience it? And trying this as I've been getting some dental procedures, it's actually been really interesting because I'm very super sensitive to noise and sound and all of that stuff. But I go, okay, if this is the last time I'm ever experiencing the sensation, how do I feel it in my body? Is it a different experience? And desire evolves through fulfillment, not denial or repression. So when we deliberately allow ourselves to gratefully feel, celebrate, and receive the fulfillment of our previously denied and disowned desires, we give those desires freedom and space to evolve and change. So this is what we do in the container of EK. So this is where we're not going, I have to fix you, I have to fix this part of me, I have to excise this part of me. This is when we fully allow our disowned desires and give them love and experience the turn on within the container of EK, they feel fulfilled. They get heard, they get felt, they get met. So whenever possible, we really want to create a judgment-free zone. And judgment is a sure path to denial and repression. So we want to do the work of fully honoring and integrating our shadows. And by doing this, we create a unified mind, unified field. This is really your high-powered heart. You know, it's full of unity that comes from the alignment of your will, your thoughts, your emotions. And you actually can use this field of coherence to create really new magical results in your life. And the last one, this one is really my favorite, which is shame is the magic killer. So shame is a weapon designed to control behavior. In our culture, you know, being shameless is considered an insult. It's considered bad. Shame is a tool that is used to demotivate. You absolutely can EK shame. Yes. So shame is a secondary, learned, or reactionary emotion. It is not a pure emotion like anger, happiness. Those are pure primary emotions. If you think of a newborn baby, you know, they're not feeling shame around their desires, their needs for love, their need for food, their body functions. Like, shame does not exist. It is a learned behavior. It's a survival mechanism. So it's learned based on environment, interactions with other people, how we're conditioned by our family units, by culture, by religion, by society. It's not a true primary emotion, although we sure feel it as such. It's that ingrained, internalized method of control and safety. And it does become a part of our neurobiology. It is, you know, to shame other people or to shame ourselves allows us to do what is culturally and socially acceptable, to keep us safe, to keep us alive. So when you start to feel hints of shame, it's really important to just like slow down and become like fully embodied and feel what comes up for you. It will be reflected in your body first. So just noticing what physical sensations arise. The earlier you catch yourself, the more space you can give yourself to notice it instead of unconsciously acting on it. So shame can be an absolutely beautiful signal of where you are suppressing your magic. And so an example of this that I'm still unpacking, because I was like, oh, shizzle sticks. Like, I grew up in a very religious household, and like even as a child, I had really poor circulation in my hands and feet. I was always cold. So what I would do is I would put my hands on the warmest part of my body, and my pelvic area, and I just kind of keep my hand down there because it was warm. And my parents would kind of walk in on me and just be absolutely like appalled. And I remember multiple times like being dragged from the bed and being like forced downstairs to the bathroom, like washing my hands in super hot water and soap till they were bleeding, like all of this shame around it. And I didn't even realize it until a couple of weeks ago when there was like, that was actually part of an exercise that we were doing, like a sex magic exercise. And I'm like, I was uncomfortable with this. Well, why am I uncomfortable with this? Because there's so much shame around it, because there's so much religious conditioning, because my parents were taught that it's shameful. It's like, which makes absolutely perfect sense if you're looking at energy and, what we can do to harness our energy and focus our energy through self-pleasure or partner pleasure, anything like that. So it's like all of these like little conditionings that happen that you don't even think about it, and completely rooted in shame. So, shame is absolutely the magic killer. And even if we can just really focus on being aware of this and shifting it whenever it's possible, and providing shameless space for other people to just like be fully themselves. This is something that I think Claire does absolutely beautifully. Is just providing that space, that shame-free space. And thank you all for your comments. So EK in the moment is kind of something that I absolutely love. This is the daily application of these axioms. We have EK within the 15-minute minimum container where we can actually go into the embodiment meditation. But there's EK, as much as it is a practice, it's also a philosophy of life. And if you start playing with these axioms, you will just naturally start creating more space in your life. You'll have an easier time embodying non-judgment. You'll have an easier time providing shameless space for other people and for yourself, most importantly. So what I would love for y'all to do, if you want to play a little game, is to choose one axiom that you really want to explore and play with this week. So maybe it's shame is the magic killer. Maybe it is looking at your life and where sensation could be maybe be more embodied and more pleasurable. Or maybe it's practicing approval. So if you feel like doing this and just posting in the chat, which one axiom do you really want to kind of like start exploring through this practice? Three or five. Well, you can also play with both of them. Approval is probably one of the hardest ones for ourselves, like fully approving of the experience and what's happening right now. Having as evidence of wanting, beautiful. Yeah. And again, with having evidence of wanting, is just there's some part of us that loves this right now. That doesn't mean that we can just like, or that we have to bypass anything that's going on in our lives. It's just there is that acknowledgement that part of us is enjoying it. This is awesome. I can love this part of it. And if I need to, I can change my circumstances. Being in the moment and savoring it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I just want to go into a couple of issues that can come up with EK. And the first one is overwhelm. I think we all experience tons of overwhelm anyways. when you start doing shadow integration work, sometimes it feels like a big cosmic game of Kerplunk. I don't know if any of you are familiar. It's one of my favorite games from childhood. It's like you pour in a bunch of marbles and there's sticks and you have to pull the sticks without all of the marbles falling through. And you take out one little stick and all the marbles fall, and this can get really overwhelming. Overwhelm is one of my favorite kinks. It's also a classic form of resistance. So when we're doing deep healing work, it's a little scary, it's threatening to the ego, which is here to keep us safe and secure. So sometimes I catch myself wanting to do it all at once, deal with the whole enchilada. And for me, that's actually a form of spiritual bypassing. It's that energy of, oh, I'm just going to skim across the top and lightly touch all of the different areas so I don't have to actually go deep into any of them. Anyone else do that? Yeah, a few nods, a few hands. Beautiful. Yes. So I found that it's most useful to really go methodical and deep, and spend some time exploring each one. So if a situation brings up multiple topics to EK around, I'll actually just have a list and I'll write them down and I'll work from that. And I give them room to breathe and unfold. And normally there's also that paralyzing of, I don't know what to EK on. There's so many different topics. And the thing is there's different experiences, but many of them will, at its core level, have a very similar underlying sensation, an underlying piece of ourselves that manifests in a bunch of different ways. So by choosing one and fully exploring it, you're actually healing the whole. You're giving permission for the whole to exist. So there's no wrong topic or more right. It's really just embodying whatever shows up for you. And there's this interesting, especially with our unconscious, going back to the house analogy, sometimes, and why we encourage you to have like a topic that is something that's like a minor annoyance to start with, is it's more likely to be a collectively influenced part of our unconscious. So it might be that, oh, I picked up this belief from my parents. I picked up this belief from my childhood and I made it mine. But once I actually examine it and bring it to the light, I can let that go. It's a bullshit belief. It's not mine. We can let it go. So it gives you a chance to have some small wins to really learn the process. And there always seems to be a point, if you make this a regular practice, where you kind of like plateau, or you start hitting something that is much deeper. These are like the deeper shadows, the ones in that basement that we don't like to talk about. And it's really important when you hit those points to give yourself time and space. You might find that grief will come up. You might find that you're hitting an edge of trauma. So you really don't want to like just kind of bulldoze your way through those. It's really great to just be able to step back about, maybe get some help. And you don't want to force yourself into, it's really, again, that bypassing. It's like, oh, this is okay, it's lovely, it's elegant, it's perfect. So just being aware that when you hit the deeper things, they might take a little bit more time, and that's absolutely gorgeous. And one of the questions that comes up the most is collective shadow work. So when we're talking about collective shadow, we're really talking about collective trauma fields. And they can really only be integrated if there's space in our systems, in our ability to integrate them. So we're like, oh, well, let's take on the patriarchy, let's take on, all of this stuff, and we have to fix it. Scarcity is a huge one. It's kind of the basis of most of our collective trauma. But really, our personal shadow work comes first, because you're doing work that allows you to create some space. Group work is absolutely amazing, but if you're still charged, the edges of your personal trauma will meet the edges of the collective trauma and other people's trauma who's kind of in the same container with you. So there's nowhere for it to go. There's no room for it to actually integrate. So you're much more likely to reactivate trauma patterns. So it's best to hold collective integration on a topic you don't have a personal charge around. So either this is because you've already done the personal work, or because it's not a collective shadow that you've personally internalized. So just kind of being aware of that, because everyone's all like, let's skip the personal work because that's uncomfortable, and let's go fix everything that's bigger in the world. I know sometimes I've had that desire. So part of this joy is this is what we call solve work. We are dissolving the blocks, the limitations, the different ego identities that we have. And you'll get to a point where you're just kind of bored. You know, you'll find, there's not really any juice here. There's not really any spark. You'll start to feel an increase of energy, vitality. And this is where you kind of start going, oh, what's next? Well, surely there's something else I have to fix, heal, and apply this to. That's totally common. Don't do it. You know, this is a practice where not everything in life is just, you know, EK is not always a hammer. And not everything is a nail. So sometimes you can take a break from EK, and we actually highly encourage it. You don't need to go and root up things to EK on. There's kind of that personal development cycle that we like to get attached to and involved in. We want to kind of create this flow between the EK and Solve shadow integration work that we do and actually creating, which is way more scary for a lot of people. So by doing Solve, we create a vacuum that wants to be filled. So if we don't really tap into our desires, we tend to go into old cycles and old patterns. So this is like new face, same relationship, new job, same patterns, because there's still maybe that unconscious habit, even though the energy has been shifted. So we do want to shift between doing personal work and doing creation work, doing the dissolving, doing the creating, kind of flowing back and forth. So one of the deepest questions is really focusing on what you want to bring in and what you want to do with this new unified will that you have. So that is a question that I would love to pose to all of you, is as we're releasing this energy and this baggage, and as we're learning to love all of the different parts of ourselves, what do you want to use that energy to create with? What do you want to create? And I'd love to hear in the chat. And with less fear, artistic creativity, excitement of taking control, beautiful. Healing businesses, film, a willingness to share your art, beautiful, beautiful. Like collaboration with other people, beautiful. Self-confidence and delight in yourself, others, and the world. I love that, Elle. Beautiful. So I would love to open the space up for some questions. I know that there was a couple in the chat, so I'm going to scroll back up. So one of the questions is, when someone has extreme self-alienation and body alienation from severe sexual trauma from infancy and birth trauma, is there any difference in how to proceed with EK? I've done a lot of healing on many levels, but deep self-alienation still exists. Yeah, I think that gentle and just really going slowly and honoring your body and your experience. So usually, you know, in the EK, we do talk about getting off and kind of more sexualized language. And for some people, you know, that's not something that they can fully access. So really looking at it from that, maybe it's just like a little spark of joy or wonder. it's really hard when you're feeling alienated from your body. And like I said, it took me a solid year. Some things that can really help is to bring self-soothing into your EK practice. So that might be like lightly stroking yourself as you're in your meditation, or doing an acupressure. So like holding any one of your fingers. You don't want to hold it too tightly, but just in like a firm grip, and holding it while you're doing your meditation can be very grounding and embodying. And also getting help and extra support, whether that is therapy, whether that is embodiment and somatic practices. I am going to be giving Claire a link to a playbook that I've created for you. It does have a guided meditation that my dear friend and client, who is a hypnotherapist, has created for you. And in that, there is a bunch of somatic embodiment practices that you can do to support yourself through the process. And there is also a link for a numbness guided meditation that I have created for you, which is really useful for those of us who kind of do go off into our heads or do disassociate from our bodies. And it's really about getting to know your numbness and seeing what's underneath it, and really honoring that as part of your experience, as part of your, protection and defense mechanisms. I think the big thing is just like slow and steady, and slowly creating a field of resilience and slowly opening your capacity. Excellent. Anyone else have any questions? Anything coming up for you?
And if anyone would like to come on live with your question, feel free to raise your digital hand, especially so we can find you. And then when Sheena says your name, you can unmute yourself. But yeah, this is a time for live questions as well as questions in the chat.
Where does addiction fit into this model? So addiction is always an interesting one. And if we go back to our house analogy, addictions are complexes. It is a defense mechanism. It is a way we have created to interact with a world that hasn't traditionally been safe. So we can talk about chemical addiction and all of the physical addictions, but there's also a lot of mental addictions, emotional addictions. They're escaping from this present moment. It's numbing out, especially if you have an issues like with numbness. Addictions are your main defense mechanism. You can get high, you can get drunk, you can eat a lot of food. Sometimes we have addictions because we really want to ground in our physical bodies and we don't know any other way to do it. So sometimes it's about like grounding in, sometimes it's about escaping. So a large part of it is just practicing radical approval and self-compassion. And also if there's, I highly recommend the Handbook to Higher Consciousness by Ken Keyes Jr. It's an old but classic, and it is absolutely life-changing. I come from a family system where there is lots of addiction and alcoholism, and reading and doing the exercises in Handbook to Higher Consciousness really gave me a new perspective on addiction itself and how to interact and relate with it, and separating the addiction from the person, which is incredibly healing. It is life-changing. I highly recommend it to everybody. And also, if anyone wants to share about their EK experience and come on and share, that is lovely too. Oh, there's hands. Okay. I'm getting used to some of this. Rachel.
Yeah, hi, Sheena. Thank you for all of this. This is amazing. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to just the definition of ego versus shadow and how they interact.
Yes. So our ego is conscious awareness. It is our interface with the world. It is our interface with our shadow and our internal life. That's why I like to think of it as a toddler, because it is the part that allows us to connect with our emotions and our mental body and our physicality. And our shadow is the unconscious parts of ourselves that our ego does not like. Our ego is completely 100% invested in keeping us alive. So anything that kind of challenges that, it's like our ego wants what is safe, what is known, and what is already, it might not be the best circumstances for us, but it knows that we can survive it. So our ego is really that part of us that it's super protective. And we do talk a lot about like, oh, I have to transcend our ego. We have to cut out our ego, but it's really our ego that allows us to be fully embodied. And our shadow is those parts of ourselves that for whatever reason, our conscious mind or our ego just doesn't want to deal with. It's not safe. It's unknown. It's uncomfortable, or it's bad or wrong. And like the shadow can be formed. Often it can be formed as adults. A lot of it is childhood conditioning. It's like, again, I grew up in a very Christian household. I couldn't talk about the fact that I was seeing weird things or, being very intuitive or anything like that. That would have gotten me excommunicated from my family at a very young age. So I just kind of shoved all of that in the corners. I don't want to have to deal with it. And it wasn't until I felt safe enough to come out of the closet as far as it goes and actually integrate those parts of myself again. Does that help? Beautiful. And Freya.
Hi. It was when I put my hand up when you said share your EK experience. So I love the principle, but I've never really been able to do the exercise in terms of getting off on this other thing. I mean, sometimes in real life I do, something can be so bad it's funny and I start laughing in my head or making a joke about it, and that's gone on before I knew EK existed. But I've never been able to sit down and deliberately kind of get myself into that state. Sometimes it's either happens or it doesn't, but I would love to learn how to do that. And I think I want to work on the desires leading to fulfillment one, because I think the second axiom I could go into too much denial around the getting off on every you know what I mean? I think I can make my head get off on it, but it's not quite the same as trying to get my body off on it,
Yes. So desire evolves through fulfillment is a really good starting point. So it's choosing a desire that might be a little taboo or wrong, or one of the ways I might encourage you to look at it is, what is one of the 7 deadly sins that you can just really fully enjoy and embrace? So maybe that's gluttony, maybe that's lust, maybe that is envy, jealousy, whatever it is, because those are all human desires too. And, it makes sense that they were bad and wrong throughout history because, we had limited resources, and indulging in those things led to a very lawless society. But even if you can just tap into a little desire like that, it's much more motivating. Because we all have our light desires, our light, fluffy, altruistic desires. We have our material desires, and then we do have these shadow desires. So maybe it's finding one of those that just piques your interest and just something you can start to play with, and finding the pleasure in that.
I'll try sloth and lust as desires, I think.
Beautiful. And that might even be just as simple as in the material world of, I'm going to totally blow off everything I had to do on my to-do list tonight and go have passionate sex, or just turn on the television and be fully present in that experience, and just find all of the joy and all of the pleasure and just in that fully embodied experience in the moment.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got one more question, but I'll wait until someone else has had their hand. I don't know how many hands are up, so.
I see Michael's hand is up, so I'll unmute him, and then Freya, we can come back to
Sure.
you.
I'll mute myself.
Great.
Beautiful.
Hi.
Hey.
How would I find out more about the Shakti Shiva Academy and their programs?
Sure. Our website is shaktishiva.academy. And so there you can find the list of courses, the calendar of events, our faculty members. And we're looking forward to having Sheena back on a regular basis to teach more about existential kink. But yeah, Michael, it's shaktishiva.academy is the website.
Beautiful.
And Freya, if you want to pop back in.
Yeah, I had a kind of question formulating, like, as I was kind of, I think one of my things to maybe practice existential kink on is like when they're like getting off on relationships either not going smoothly or not being creative collaboration, because maybe that's something that I get frustrated by when it doesn't happen, like, oh, there isn't the right person to collaborate with, so I feel kind of limited. And I wonder if that's something I can do and like play with what Sheena would think about existential, like how I would turn that into an existential kink exercise.
Is there a part of yourself that, so normally there's like these specific situations, and it always helps to go like, what's the underlying like feeling or emotion or need that's not being met? So that might be, maybe there's a part of yourself that just loves being the lone wolf, who loves creating these situations where, you know, you can't find anybody to collaborate because you're just that awesome all on your own and you don't need any collaboration. Or it might be there's a part of yourself that's like really scared of rejection, so doesn't even want to bring into your sphere people that you can collaborate with. Behind all of these different situations, it's going to be individualized for one person. So sometimes it takes a little bit of like that excavation work to just notice in your body, like, oh, does this feel juicy and true, or is it something else? And just kind of going through that process. So what in this example of, you know, not finding people to collaborate with, what's behind it for you?
Yeah, I should finesse that, because I collaborate a lot, and a lot of the time it's specific things that I can't find, and it's almost like on an energetic level, you know what I mean? So I have a lot of collaboration, whether it's work, friendship, but like there is a lot of collaboration, but I don't feel that there are a lot of people where I can play in an energetic space, which sounds odd when I'm in a community like Wealth, but I probably don't hang out with that many people. I'm thinking about like my day-to-day life, you know? Yeah, and I think there's something around expansion and restriction there. So
Beautiful. Those look like some beautiful things that you can start exploring.
brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome. And there is a question about what can one do to get out of the plateau of boredom? This is a really interesting question because boredom can be energetically caused by a few different things. Boredom can be a way of numbing out. It can be also that when we are doing EK, we'll get to a point where like, oh, this situation is just boring. Like whether that is within our EK meditation, we get to a point where we're like, maybe we've been doing it for a week and you actually want to hit that boredom. Or you just look around your life circumstances and be like, yeah, I don't want to play this game anymore. I'm bored of it. And that's actually a beautiful sign. So it's kind of looking at like, what is underneath the boredom for you? And also just going, well, you can create something new. You can have a different experience. So boredom is that sign that, you know, that one way or another, something needs to be shifted or moved. So many people in the professional development community, spiritual development community is, I want to basically, I don't want to work hard. I just want everything to come to me. You know, I want to make $20,000 a month in passive income. And I always go, I don't want to expand any effort. And then I just go, oh, wait a minute. You know, there's so much around that we can EK around like scarcity and our beliefs that, you know, it has to be hard, that we have to sacrifice. But we all need to accept that effort is just a part of being human. It's a part of experiencing ourselves. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be hard work. But in order to move out of the current situation that we're in, it takes effort, whether that is walking, whether, you know, something at rest, will it stay at rest? So having a evidence of wanting and you're just waiting, you're going to be reflected in your current circumstances. So it's kind of divorcing that difference between like effort and hard work and sacrifice. That is a beautiful thing. I think all of us can EK on.
Great. And if I can interject for one quick second, because we're at the 90-minute mark. And before I create the pivot, there was one question in the chat, Sheena, and there might be a really quick answer to it. That would be helpful to everyone who's here.
Part of you that enjoys the highly sensational experiences, what is that name role of that part in EK? Is it the divine spark, or that is, so we tend to use the term in kind of like more occult circles, it's your holy guardian angel. In Jungian terms, that is the big S self, or the individuated self. It can be that part of us that is the divine spark. There's different names for it, but it's really that part of ourselves that really just wants to experience everything in life. It's kind of the whole reason that we incarnate. You know, nature doesn't just say, oh, well, you know, I've just created 5 trees. I'm good. We'll stop. We don't need to experience anymore. So it is very much that, that cosmic part of us and our soul. And it's just kind of whatever terminology really fits for you.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to create a pivot in just a moment for those who need to leave or who are ready to leave. And then for those who want to stay on for just a few minutes longer, we can have more of a free-form conversation. But I'll have one quick announcement, and that is that Saturday in 2 weeks, on August the 28th, the Shakti Shiva Academy is going to have our next masterclass. And this is with another new faculty member of ours. His name is Paul Abramowitz. He's South African based. He's a wonderful teacher, and he's an author and a Renaissance man. And he is such a huge advocate for heterosexual men. You know, we've already done a lot of programming for women identified beings. Now it's time for some attention for the heterosexual men, cisgender men, because Paul's written a beautiful book specifically about those topics and about them. But it's a conversation that is open and relevant to everyone who would like to join. It's called Big Awakening, Great Sex, and Deep Intimacy, and Winning Strategies for Heterosexual Men. But again, everyone's welcome. So we'll be sending some info out about that. So that is in 2 weeks, same time. We'll be on Zoom together. But now for everyone or anyone who needs to leave or depart, we want to thank you so much. And Sheena, thank you for being such a wonderful guide into existential kink. And for everyone who's gathered, thank you. And for anyone who wants to stay on for another 5, 10, 12 or so minutes, we can have a little more free flow, organic conversation. But yes, a big hearty thank you to everyone who's gathered. It's a real joy to get to be with you.
Thank you all for showing up.
Definitely. And Sheena, I had an EK question, and for whoever needs to leave can hop on off at any point. But going back to the axiom about strokes, because we define strokes as life happenings, like anything that happens in life is a stroke. But could you share the origination of the word stroke? How did that word come about to be included in the axiom as it relates to existential kink?
Yes. Carolyn's background is influenced by the orgasmic meditation movement, and they're very much about strokes. The idea that there is an upstrokes, which is like positive, high sensation, things that happen that are really good to us, things we really enjoy, and downstrokes are things that might be a little bit more uncomfortable or unpleasant, and how we can learn to like really enjoy both.
Awesome. Yes, 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 yes. And if anyone wants to just come off of mute, we can kind of create an organic conversation. I know some might just be in the background listening, but it's kind of like a cocktail party. We're kind of backstage now and just enjoying the topic, enjoying each other, enjoying having Sheena here today. And yeah. If there's anything that's on your mind, we're kind of organic now.
I'll share something.
Yeah.
Let's see, I had some physical therapy for rib healing for a long time, and my physical therapist told me to take baths with baking soda, that it extracts toxins from the body. And then that would be also true like for emotional trauma and whatnot. So I got into a habit of getting the EK book and bringing it into the bathtub with me and lighting the candles and the incenses. It was so beautiful, but I have to share that I would go into my annoying thing, and then quite often it leads to these huge catharsis events. Like I'm screaming, "Fuck you," at my dad, and just I had the most amazing, crazy experiences that I had to just breathe through. And I just wanted to share that. That's my EK experience so far. It hasn't I go for the big bang, I guess. But afterwards, just lying in the bathtub, just completely depleted, breathing through it, and then a little giggle. Okay, what next? Nothing's next. Just pure enjoyment. So that's what happens to me.
I love that, Sherry, and I deeply appreciate that you sharing that process. Yeah, it was the guidelines for EK are very simple because we really highly encourage you to create your own practice and to make it your own. And again, we're all coming from like different states and abilities and experience. And I love like your idea of doing it in the bath. You know, water is so cleansing and healing, and just allowing that to be. And you know, there's EK you can do like rage alchemy. There's so many different ways that we can do it. And I think that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
Hi, I'm the one who had the question about severe self-alienation coming from early trauma. And I wanted to share that the thing that helps me every day, and I do this pretty much every day, is put on music and dance. It's the time each day when I can most easily be present in my body, because the rest of the time it's really hard for me to be present. But when I'm dancing, it's just opening to whatever wants to come through. It just opens things up for me in a whole different way.
That's beautiful. And I think that's so important. And I resonate because dance was kind of how I started to shift things a lot as well. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing is these days I've been doing EK for like 6+ years. So I generally will not do a full EK session, but I've actually started incorporating EK in dance. So that's just like, what I'll do is I'll tap into, you know, what's this part of myself that wants to come through, and I will just dance with it and just kind of just go like whatever my body feels like doing. And just like, because dance is a beautiful way of honoring the other, honoring that partner, and honoring your body. So just moving and like really tapping into it that way. That is a beautiful way of dancing with the parts of yourself and allowing that space for exploration. I'd love for you to try it and let me know how it goes.
Looks like Asana, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, I just firstly wanted to thank you for the great session. I missed part of it, but you know, I've been doing EK for a bit, so I'm going to watch the recording. Thank you, Sheena, very much. Thank you, everyone. Well, I just wanted to share something that I'm going to read the book again, and this is what I'm going to recommend to everyone, because EK is something that makes sense to you, and after a while, you kind of need to circle back with yourself again, because each of the, you know, that's how learning happens. I'm a teacher myself, so I can speak to that a bit. Maybe in like every 3 months, maybe we need to go back, not to the whole book, but to the parts of it. So this is what I'm about to do again. And the thing that I practice every day, I find it to be really useful, is I've started approving everything. It was so hard Right. I wonder if you guys like, I mean, my background is like just like not approving a lot of things. So I was just doing it subconscious, like, what, look at that person, they're doing this person is not polite, or that thing is not, whatever. This just whole conversation was going on. And then I caught myself doing that all the time. Like, probably this helps, like on an everyday basis, just go around and approve things. Like, it's an everyday thing everyone can do. And it was extremely hard for me at the beginning, realizing how much disapproval I was like just doing without even knowing. And I've just started this. I thought it would be a practical way to just, as you get up in the morning, you start approving of yourself. Like, the first thing in the mirror, you see yourself, disheveled hair and everything, just approve of that and go about your day approving everything. I find this to be really something. I don't know the results yet, but it was hard for me, meaning that it was an area I needed to work on. Just wanted to share that, so probably somebody else can use. Thank you, Sheena, again, answering all my weird questions on Facebook.
You know what, it is absolutely my pleasure. And I love this approval. So what you're really doing is like, you're building resiliency and you're building capacity and you're building that habit of approval. And yeah, it's like, when I first started doing EK, I had a really hard time with that too. And I still do, we all do, but it was like, sometimes all I could do is get out of bed in the morning. And, oh, I approved of the fact that I put one foot on the floor. Okay, next foot on the floor. And it's that interesting, like, approval of self and approval of others. And it's kind of seeing where we're kind of cheating ourselves out of both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you did mention the Facebook group, and I do want to highlight that. We do have an Existential Kink Facebook group that I coach, and it's a beautiful, beautiful community. There's everyone kind of going through and sharing their own processes. You can ask questions, you can kind of dive into it all together. And I'd love to invite anybody who wants to come. If you just search in Existential Kink, you will find the group. And it's a beautiful community. I quite adore it. It makes me happy just to be in there and to witness everyone going through the process.
And Sheena, I see one more question in the chat, at least that's visible, and it is about being in an ambivalent place on the topic. So I'm in an in-between place with my partner and feel like I'm okay with either continuing with him or separating, and that is painful. Not sure how EK can help me or what to imagine. Could you help us with that, Sheena? That dilemma.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's ambivalence or numbness. That would be my first invitation to explore. The interesting thing about doing this work is the more non-attached and non-judgmental you become, it's like that the more you are accepting of non-duality, you do kind of get into this space where you just become like above the limit. Like, people can come or they can go there. It's not dependent on your happiness and your desire. So this is where we really want to kind of be looking at, are we numbing out, and is the ambivalence part of that numbness, or are we just not tapping into our desire and actually efforting or moving towards what we actually desire? And I teach many classes on desire. It's one of my favorite topics. It's kind of like committed desire is the basis of our experience, but we're also not taught to be able to honor our desires or to even really know what they are or to accept them. So part of this process as you're doing the dissolving is like, when you're feeling ready, it's like, what do you actually desire? What do you actually want to experience in this human experience? And who is a part of that? It's kind of like we go through cycles of creation and destruction, and no one likes to talk about the destructive side of the creative process. But in order to create space and to create and birth something new into the world, that often involves things falling away or letting go or having to redefine. Any and all are wonderful. So it's just kind of looking at how can you shift your relationship into what you truly desire and what you want to experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is there any one last remaining question or comment before we start to come in for a landing today. And if there is, feel free to unmute yourself and hop on in. Yeah. And if we feel like we've reached our place of completion, then once again, a huge thank you to you all for taking time out of your day to join us in this conversation. Sheena, thank you for preparing such marvelously helpful and useful information and guidance for us. And there will be a lot more conversation about existential kink coming up, because it's definitely a modality that serves many purposes and is wildly, wildly helpful with regaining our freedom and our connection to a desire and creativity. And so with that, thank you all so, so much. I'm going to unmute the line so we can say goodbye to each other for now. And it's so great being with you. So